just to introduce you to Ronny. Ronny has been with us, I would say, with 2019. We have had the privilege to expand our network within Latin America, and that said also thanks to our Brazilian member. And we had the great pleasure to meet Ronny CEO, Mr. Jorge Bautista. The cooperative model in the banking cooperative model in Colombia is quite particular, as it serves more than 600 cooperative banks. So Banco Central Cooperativo is a central organ for all those more than 600 cooperative banks in Colombia. Therefore, also their particularity, and this will be explained more precisely by Ronny, is that the business model has also changed in the last year, transitioning to nearly a full digital bank and working very closely with fintechs. And this is where Ronny took a great part in this transition. And so the topic also of today, how artificial intelligence can contribute to cybersecurity, is of importance. And I would say that in the network of CIBP, I would say that this expertise is really particular to Banco Central Cooperativo and mainly to Ronny. You have been exposing a lot of presentations on that topic, Ronny. You have been also nominated in different awards on digital transitions. So it's an honor to have you with us today. Thank you. Ronny, ¿puedes hablar?
Sí, ya tiene la presentación.
La voy a cargar mientras que comiences.
Listo. Bueno, muy buenos días para todos, tardes. Nuestra charla comienza con inteligencia artificial y el Open Finance, la clave de la ciberseguridad del sector financiero. Sí. Lo que buscamos principalmente es empezar a correlacionar todo lo que la inteligencia artificial y la nueva tendencia del Open Finance nos está llevando a generar nuevos retos y nuevas habilidades en cada una de las organizaciones, ya que todas estas herramientas de digitalización, de lo que se denomina la nueva revolución industrial 4.0, pues nos ha llevado a tomar una serie de planes estratégicos desde cada una de nuestras organizaciones. Si quieres, Valeria, vamos a la próxima. Entonces vamos a analizar como 5 tendencias que conforman una estrategia de datos interconectada. Esto lo que buscamos es poder interoperar con el mayor número de ecosistemas, ya sean nacionales o internacionales. Esto nos va a llevar a que los usuarios sean los dueños de sus datos, ya no las entidades, sino cada usuario financiero. Nos va a llevar a que nosotros seamos ya custodio de sus datos y poder interoperar en un mundo más digital, más interconectado. Entonces, una de las principales tendencias pues es olvidarse de los hilos de datos. Esto quiere decir que nos llenamos de tanta cantidad de información que puede estar estructurada o no puede estar estructurada. Y la inteligencia artificial con su llegada nos ayuda a podernos enfocar más en el detalle. Es importante empezar a descubrir.
It's important to begin to rediscover which those correlations are, that we are not going to look only at the data and their analysis. We see that cybersecurity, when we do all of this, sometimes we took a long time, and then when we determined a correlation of a vulnerability. It was too late. With artificial intelligence, it helps us
de esa información que realmente necesitamos detallar y que nos lleva a tener una reacción más oportuna frente a los retos, ya sean en temas de ciberseguridad, ya sean en poder incursionar en un nuevo mercado, en cerrar brechas. Entonces vamos a estar mucho más enfocados. Precisamente esto nos va a ayudar a cambiar de pensamiento y de capacidades frente a los nuevos empleos, ¿sí? Segunda tendencia, pues, es abrirle el paso al ecosistema de datos abiertos. Es precisamente el interoperar, el poder llevar todos estos datos
to interoperate, to be able to take all of this data to each one of the new actors of the ecosystem. So that would be the open finance. There are banks that have already begun to work on banking associated services, which are financial services by consumption. The new fintech that have come in allow us to penetrate the market in a more efficient manner. And this global opening of the data and of the information and of the cyber attackers helps us first to defend ourselves in a better way. And secondly, it will be increasingly complex. This cyber crime world will be increasingly complex, and it's like we're in competition. So accepting into artificial intelligence means that each entity has to consolidate. This is something that's in the market. We have to start to generate new competencies, trying to avoid conceptual barriers or generational barriers in not accepting these new technologies, and to start to work in management of change, where all of our employees will be able to take that step and assume artificial intelligence and the new processes as a way to be more efficient in each one of our jobs. The insights are everywhere. It's just to integrate them. Is that every idea we have in relation to our plans or our goals or strategic planning will be able to reach that point and see it in a global way with all of the different ecosystems and actors, and to have a determined route without going over any of the value chain points, either technology or protection or cybersecurity or information security. We have to start to discover the unknown data. We're swimming in a data lake and an information lake, and we have to look into it to review and check what data we're not seeing and which data would be generating value in our organization. When we have so much data and if we don't have an automated process, because we used to do it very manually, artificial intelligence will allow us to analyze each of this unknown data and to be able to generate value from them. Next, please. Next slide, please. For 2026, 82% of the organizations will try to back all of the flow, their workflow, through the data of AI or artificial intelligence. So we have to be attentive to this new data and this new competition that exists in the market. The automation of processes, the interoperativity through data in the cloud to be much more efficient. 78% of the board of directors or of the executives believe that the use of external data will be extremely important for each entity, and this is what we call open finance, open banking, open data, where I'll begin to determine what my user is doing in relation to the industry, what my user is doing in relation to indebtedness, to capacity, how the user is moving between consumption pathway. So it will allow us to determine who my customer is in the digital world. Next, Valeria, we are now on 4, right? So to be able to start to generate all of this strategic planning from the core banking of each institution, the first thing is to try to find an interoperative or operation strategy, how I'll be able to interoperate with all of my transactions, for that we find the low cost payment system, for example, Visa or MasterCard, who are a channel to be able to generate a faster interoperativity. All of the associations or the ASH data will help us to integrate with more agile suppliers. We have to take into account the role of existing investments. We always have to have a return on investment. We could generate interoperative projects that are 100% sustainable. It's not another point is not to block the open data system. As I consume third-party data, I also have to open up my core, and that's one of the most important points and one of the largest barriers, because we came from a very protective environment. Now we have to open it to be able to have the freedom in a safe way, and that's where cybersecurity strategic planning comes in. To be open with the ecosystem will generate more protection, and for that we have institutions that support us in all of this topic of open data, the C topics, integrating them with artificial intelligence will help us to be more preventive and to have more resiliency, I'm sorry, if there's a vulnerability, so we could recover faster and we'd be able to establish an optimal contingency process. In the next slide, the open systems that allow the data movement and the analysis of data in multiple clouds. We see that in the market, we have a lot of infrastructure in the cloud already with high quality standards, but let's not forget that the responsibility of handling data will be on the hands of the institution and not in the owner of the cloud. We have to generate the same strategies that we work with in the land or brick and mortar strategies. We have to generate robust ecosystems, open systems that have tools that allow us to solve specific problems and detailed problems. And artificial intelligence will be the one looking for those problems, trying to determine which are the isolated data that will help us to solve a problem. It is important to adopt international standards, open architecture that would help us to interoperate in a more agile and faster way, to be able to move into the ASH type of languages that generate new tools and new digital assets. We see that the central banks are structuring the digital currency issues in the US, in Europe, and some parts of Latin America. This digital currency processes are being generated, and this will lead us to identify each of the ways of how the consumption is done and how transaction moves at the interoperative levels. We're going at the same time with cybersecurity, with fraud that could materialize in any of the different ecosystems, and which could indirectly be, we could be members of its contagion. Also, everything related to GAFI, and terrorism financing, and it will help close the gap because all of the transactions will be very delimited. The tracking will be a lot more efficient. The data tracking, all of his audio, the data of how I store the data, well, I'll have to have an architecture based on models that help us to structure and correlate the data. The subject of the course, we have to generate systems of open data with an architectonic design that has to be point network, I think, that helps me protect the information, and this will generate an evolution in terms that the transactional cost will be reduced, the cost of international transactions will go down, everything related to remittances and transfers, international transfers will be reduced, and that is changing everything in our institution. The subject of the new actors, which are the fintechs, in the generation of digital assets like stable coins has led people to be able to have international transactions from anywhere. And we have to be competitive in that area. We have to look at strategies of how to be very competitive in relation to how we face this new opportunities. How do we take advantage of them by generating alliances with the fintechs? We could grow together and simultaneously. We see how the license of open code, that's all related to the cloud and open banking, and the commercial licenses is, let's say, by with 2021, they in the graph, the lines intersect, and we'll see that in the future, everything will be related to services. We will not have our own proprietary infrastructure or proprietary data systems. Everything will be through fintech data services or data service platforms. Everything will be done through services. It reduces costs, but in the long term, it will also be generating like a very strong union between all of the different stakeholders that participate in these ecosystems. Next, Valeria. For 2025, at least 90% of the new products or apps will include functions of artificial intelligence incorporated into them. We're seeing artificial intelligence everywhere in our cell phones, in the cameras of our cell phones that make an adjustment of the image using AI. We see how the social network platforms are already identifying how you consume. That's done with AI inside of our organizations. In security, we are implementing AI subjects to see what correlations or silos could be used. So the scoring subjects in real time, how possible or how probable is that a customer can default his loan. AI is determining it, and for 2025, all of the analysis and the profiling of the users will be 95% effective for granting loans. And here we establish a point of a turning point in relation to how I have to behave in society, because all of the data will be interconnected. Health, the behavior in society, my economic behavior, my educational behavior, and the profiles will be very precise of who the person is. And this will help us in relation to an economic positioning. At the personal level, I think that we're going to be very controlled and under surveillance. So we have to see how this evolves with an equilibrium that doesn't generate so much intrusion in people's lives. Next, please. Okay, the recommendations to adopt AI and machine learning. Machine learning is probably more advanced than artificial intelligence, and this is how all the machines around us interrelate and take information to AI. And so we see that one of the objects that we have around us are the assistants, like Alexa or Google or different big actors in Microsoft are compiling data, collecting data from everywhere, the cell phones themselves. So it's important that all of this data science, that all of the people who are receiving that information channeled through AI have the competencies to extract it. AI actually is not really an intelligence per se, it's a system to generate and correlate data. And what it helps us to do is to begin to generate more data, more information, and of course, they're going to generate a higher correlation between the information we want to extract and analyze. So it's important to understand from where this information is starting to be trained inside our organization, and what's the record, where do the data come from? With so much information, fake information existing in the system, we might be consulting data that actually are not aligned with reality. They're completely fake, and they would generate deviations in the analysis. So we have to analyze where we're getting the data from. The data should be certified. All the projects, no matter how small, would generate immediate results in relation to the tools that we're using, the AI and machine learning tools that we're using. The idea is that 100% of the data we have, the AI and machine learning system is generating 1% of, let's say, the gold of the data, the gold mining, with the data mining. As people, we have to go straight to what we need, and to the need we have to resolve, or the problem we have to resolve, or the need we have to cover. So we have that solution for the data lake that we had, and we're closing that gap. We're generating more competences. We're generating new professions. There's an evolution in the subject of what you study, professions at present. So we're generating a very large gap between the competences and the analytical professions, the technical professions, and the professions in relation to art are changing faster. The companies, the entities at present don't have the capacities or the competencies or the professions that we will have in 2026. So right now we have a great opportunity for us and for all of the people who are training now to go into this and see the new interrelations with AI. We want to become data scientists. We want to generate models and know how to train AI. And all of the subject related to be able to generate a robot, to generate automation. That's a lot more useful. You don't need a system engineering or to do it with AI. Anyone can generate a web page or a program or a robot and do their work in a more efficient way. Next, please. Okay, during the next years, 75% of the organizations will demand a new assistance function for decision making. What would that assistance be? Well, it's artificial intelligence. The technology advances in an exponential manner. We're talking about not only artificial intelligence, but about quantic systems that could do 10,000 operations in 1 second. And that helps us to, of course, strengthen our competencies, our capacities, and to start to understand how I can extract that information. Artificial intelligence helps a lot to solve problems, but I also have to know how to extract that information. If I ask something very basic, the answer will be very basic. If I ask many, well, very structured questions, that's what I'll receive back. So that's what I have to learn how to do, the prompting generation. How do I ask artificial intelligence, or how do I program artificial intelligence to generate a response or a problem solution that's really effective? In the future, we are not going to measure the return on investment, but artificial intelligence, how it's connecting me and how it generates results to take better decisions. Right now, we're going through a competition of who offers an AI platform that's more robust with more apps and that's more interconnected. But let's take into account that that interconnection must be with data that are true data, really true, that generate information. There are data lakes being generated with fake information to be able to generate gaps or disadvantages versus the competition. So when we generate all of this information and all of this software of artificial intelligence, the objective would be to improve the procedures or the processes for decision making, to increase earnings, to optimize the supply chains and develop products, and of course, to improve cybersecurity products in the market. Next, Valeria. When we talk about semantics, where the data and the control of data in our information, we see that we have to reduce that complexity and that delivery of statistics. All of the users must allow a more exploration of their data. We have to identify where the data are. Open data will be able to give me that information from all the different segments and sectors of the economy. I have to begin to go through and to limit the data that are to be processed to improve efficiency. And people not only want to see the data or points that interest them or correlations that are interesting for them in relation to information, but our AI systems will want to review external data to be able to cover all of this information. So all of this will generate an opportunity or a threat versus to the fact that I'm going to have real-time information, threats in real time, analysis in real time. And I need competencies that lead me to have people that the people who receive that information will be able to focus and to be able to reach that, let's say, conscious or aware layer or plane of information that would allow me to take a decision. The people actually are the ones who make the last or the final decision in relation to the information generated by artificial intelligence in America, and all of the inside customers receive real-time threats in their security and the analysis that are incorporated. We see where the threats are in real time, what country is attacking. In Europe, we see that employees are getting data that are very reliable and of self-service, and the services could be escalated from one product or one platform. I can manage all of my banking products, and that will help me be more efficient in my personal finances. And at the level of the financial system, I am going to have better data to be able to reach my customers. Actually, or right now, 77% of the organizations are trying to find how to improve the classification of their data, to classify information, and to implement controls on privacy and cybersecurity. How do I check that a platform X will go to Y bank and get data? All of that tracking has to be ciphered. I have to ensure the customer that the platform that is requesting the data is also safe. It's not that the open finance would allow me to connect where the customer wants. If I also have the need to validate that point of connection to inform if that platform is safe or not, because I could be generating a vulnerability in my core banking of my system. And so that platform would be interconnected with all of my system. Valeria, next. Okay, in all of this world of data and data lakes, it's important to have visibility over all the data that I can share. How do I manage the risk of those data? How do I understand all of the canalizations and transfer of data? Where I'm transferring the data? How do they process the information? What controls they have? And it's not only a risk analysis in relation to I as an institution, but how are my stakeholders in relation to that processing. So I think it's going a little bit beyond. They have to verify who they connect to. As I go in depth into the data and into the interconnection, where my information is going to, I'm going to have better control and a better standard of effectiveness in relation to the information that I am custodying or that I am transferring. So this will allow me to be more efficient in each one of the processes. In the same way, I have to make sure that the data are detectable, and I have to give the information of how I receive the information, how I transfer the information, and what my structure is so that they can read it. So it's a free environment, a controlled environment, and an environment that's sensitive so that I can know where I'm moving at or where I'm swimming in relation to the information. It should be transparent, and I should not go into dark environments that could put the data of my associate at risk, the information of my client or of my own information, of how I manage my internal strategies. So you have to be very careful with this. And for that, in cybersecurity, what we do is establish an inventory of the assets. And this is the classification of digital assets. And each our digital asset will have a control and evaluation in relation to the exposure it has either at the entry or exit of the information. We have to be very, very accurate, very exact. And artificial intelligence helps us in this classification. It's important that each data or each information knows how the interoperation is done, what is the automation process at the entrepreneurial level or at the banking level. And at the end is how we live through this fourth trend. How do we make this change, this transition of paradigms, this change from physical life to digital life? It's true that when we go into the subject of the Industrial Revolution 4.0, it's part of it, but we have to also keep an eye on physical people, individuals who perhaps are a lower percentage, but who have acceptance and And we must be inclusive in relation to the way how I approach them. I cannot become 100% digital because I'd be excluding that population. I have to have a hybrid environment until there's a generational change that will lead me to 100% digital environment, or where there are changes in legislation that make citizens become 100% digital. Next. The emerging changes in this trend, well, we see that it is a more complex subject. There are increasingly more companies that adopt a collaborative or a cooperative focus. Virtuality has led to, in terms of employability or of competences, to be more cooperative and to be closer to each other. Unfortunately, in information dissemination and flexibility, we've departed more. But one of the recommendations is to protect privacy, to protect the sovereignty of data. We have to be more efficient in that governance. We have to include in our organizations data directors, data scientists, information security directors. All of the legal topic is evolving in terms of subjects related to artificial intelligence. We can draw a contract in 3 minutes without needing a lawyer. So the subject of the committees of data risk management is very important. It's a committee that has to be created, and it must be positioned within the organization, because the most important, valuable asset is the data. 66% of the large companies are making important investments in technology, in data control. So this is a very relevant subject in terms of cybersecurity. Well, that's what I have to protect. We must protect from data abduction, from data filtration, that data are not publicized. And it's to protect the data of our associates. The information of our associates must be custodied or under custody. So this is a very important point. And this changes our perception of the business, of the financial business. Next, Valeria. Lastly, these are some of the technologies that I wanted to share with you. It's a broad range of technologies that include or incorporate artificial intelligence, that incorporates strategies and helps with the planning. Many of the partners are from Google, but there are others who help us to make decisions in automation, to be able to generate ERPs that are more intelligent, or to generate data architecture at the artificial intelligence level. So I'll leave you the names of these institutions and of the solutions, technological solutions that would help us be more efficient. The bank has implemented it, and it has generated a 90% level of efficiency. So I make them available to you. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Valeria. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you very much. Well,
to the audience, if you have any questions for Ronny, if a curiosity or comment, or have you learned something from his presentation today of his methodology? You can also
I would like to ask which of those presented tools on the last slide do you use, or is it just something we should have on our radar? Are there really any tools included in your bank processes, for example?
Emilia, if it's possible, I don't know, the audio had a lot of echo. So you think you can correct that so that our interpreter can maybe better translate, or if you can write the question in the chat?
I can also write the question in the chat, maybe.
Thank you, Emilia.
No problem.
¿Puedes escucharme?
Sí.
Vale, perdón, he llegado
Can you
retrasado.
hear me? I'm sorry, I came in late. So first of all, I'd like to excuse myself, but my question is if the material could be shared with us so that we can read it with more analysis and slowly. Of course, we could share the information through Valeria.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Mariana. Entonces, la pregunta
Of
de
course,
Emilia
Mariana.
era,
So Emilia's question,
acabo de leer
she wrote it in the
para
chat, and I'm going to read it for our
tools
interpreter.
different
¿Cuáles
from
herramientas?
the ones
¿Cuáles?
presented in the last slides? Shall I share the last slides with everyone so that we know what Emilia is referring to? Is it this slide, Emilia?
No
Ronny,
te escucho.
¿la pregunta?
No te escucho, Emilia.
Entonces, la pregunta de Emilia era, y no sé si puedes escuchar, pero la voy a traducir yo. ¿Cuáles son las herramientas que
What are the tools that you use?
¿Cuáles son las herramientas que usaste? Como presentas algunas herramientas en la última
Since you're showing some tools in the last slides, which are the ones that you are using, Ronnie?
El DRP, todos los
We're
servicios.
using SAP for DRP for all of the financial services. We use data metrics for migration purposes and for data structuring. And we use data bricks for the architecture of the data lakehouse and to the AI improvement, Colinda for governance and unification of data. Those are the ones we use. We also use Rocket Flow that helps us automate workflows. We integrate ChatGPT with some links to generate more competencies in the different positions like DR or the legal issues or work security or work safety topics. And so those are the ones that we've used the most.
Muchas gracias por tu respuesta, Ronny.
Thank you for your answer, Ronnie. Perhaps I would have a question, and I'm going to make it first in English.
If it's okay, I'm really curious how you mapped all the examples that you have from Europe, from Asia, from America. So how did you map this within your team, and when did you went on explorer excursion? Or how does the EI world function, and how did you work with your team on that? And how did you select those examples as an inspiration for you?
Maybe he is not in the interpretation channel. I don't think he was in the interpretation channel, Valeria.
Voy a intentar hacer la traducción en español. Un momento, por favor.
Can you tell him to go to the interpretation channel? The question was how in your team you selected the good practice examples that you showed from the US, Asia, and Europe, or the Americas, and
porque esos ejemplos fueron
best practices. Why were those examples the ones you used to direct your strategy, and how did you explore those companies? Do you know yourselves very well in the AI world? because it's a small world, or did you go out into the world trying to look for best practices? How did you determine, or how did you really choose the examples that you showed? We went out to look for best practices. What we did was that the ones who were more advanced in artificial intelligence were the fintechs. We saw that there were fintechs that have some very interesting subjects of automation. In Germany, for example, in AI, in Canada, in the US, they have evolved in also a lot in Israel. So we have generated trainings and we've done exchange programs to learn. And I think that what we've learned from the fintechs has generated more than a concern, an opportunity to grow. And that has helped us. It also has led to awards in terms of efficiency and open banking. And how I transfer those tools into the cooperative system, to the solidarity system, will help us be more efficient and to be at the same level of traditional levels. And if we continue in this path, we could even surpass them.
Muy interesante, very interesting. We have another question from Emilia also. I will read it in English and then translate it to you in Spanish, Ronny. Can every employee use your integrated chat GPT? ¿Vuestros empleados pueden usar el chat GPT?
Sí,
When your
nuestros
employees use the ChatGPT,
tenemos algunas restricciones para no.
yes, they can. We have of course, some restrictions so that we don't share sensitive data, but it does help them be more efficient in trying to find answers or to make better decisions. The idea is to train them in relation to, well, and how should I analyze the information? How should I respond to the information generated by ChatGPT? Because if I introduce trash, well, I'll get trash. So I have to be very efficient in my questions and how I deliver the information.
Thank you very much for your answer. Yes, please. I heard an end from someone. Any other questions or any other comments for Ronny?
A small question, maybe. Is there any regulation imposed by the Colombian regulators or in South America? Because now we are facing heavily IT-related regulations like open finance, for instance, and this is something that is actually also in contradiction with our values and for cooperative banking. It's actually the regional business, and with open finance, you have to open your gates for a bigger stage, and we are somehow in a mess because we don't know how to deal with this, and how to generate new concepts. And therefore, I'm asking: is it something that has organically grown in your business or in your enterprise, or was it imposed by the regulators?
Sí, voy a tentar. I will try to translate your question, Ismael, to Ronny. La pregunta de Ismael, y la voy a resumir, I will resume it.
Ismael's question, and I'll summarize it, is that
y entonces los bancos cooperativos aquí no tienen esa oportunidad de trabajar como ustedes lo hacen con AI y los fintechs. Y también para el modelo del banco cooperativo en Europa es un poco contrario de los valores de los bancos cooperativos a abrir y extender con el Open Finance a otros puntos. Así que Ismael quería saber cuál es el papel de regulador en Colombia y cómo ustedes encontraron esa oportunidad, porque en Europa, como dice Ismael.
Because in Europe, as Ismail is saying, they're really struggling to try to innovate and to open up to new technology. Fortunately, in Colombia, the regulator has taken into account the cooperative, the solidarity sector. The regulator went a little bit further and they didn't implement open finance, but went into open data. That's what they implemented. And so what that helps us to do is that it's not only the financial sector, but also the government sector, the health sector, and all of the different stakeholders will be able to share their data. And so it's a very important opportunity in 2025. It will become mandatory. All of the different institutions should be using open data. So it's an alignment that's really efficient in relation to what we are looking for, to have more stakeholders in the system. As to artificial intelligence, the regulator is focusing on producing regulations related to the ethics of artificial intelligence. So right now, it's still open. It's not a regulation that tells us how to do it. It's more like a self-criticism or self-control in relation to what I'm looking for with AI, but there will be a law on ethics, on how the ecosystem has to use these tools or should use these tools that initially were very invasive and that started with very complex subjects. You could create cybernetic attacks from ChatGPT. So the ecosystems themselves and the apps are self-regulating, and the governments are already starting to generate their own regulations and their own ethics regulations or laws.
Muchas gracias, Ronny. Thank you very much, Ismael, for your question. Please go
Thank
ahead.
you. I guess this is actually the problem, because as long as you don't know how to deal with the information that you're generating from such tools, this won't we won't be able to utilize them. So thanks for the insight, of course. Thanks.
Thank you, Ismael. Lo que está diciendo Ismael, Ronny, es que es verdad que su reflexión es en cuanto no se sabe qué tipo de información se está tratando, entonces no habrá esa libertad para generar y trabajar con esa
She is
información.
repeating the question.
Gracias a ti por tu respuesta. We have a last question, if you will, from Emilia, and thank you, Emilia, again. What is your best practice process use case where generative AI is integrated? Entonces, ¿cuál es tu mejor práctica de proceso o de caso de estudio donde AI fue integrado?
Bueno, el mejor caso es, pues arrancamos.
The best case was we started with the change of the core. We amplified it to be interoperable. After that, we had an interoperability with fintechs. It's like neobanks that generate wallets. And we are looking for wallets like Claro Pay. There's a very large banking correspondent in Colombia with Te Paga, which is a disruptor in subjects of neobanks. And internationally, we have success cases with Visa Direct, where we can do online international transfers to any cooperative institution that has a Visa card or any electronic wallet that is in the data service model. So in Colombia, we created the first fintech system in the company, and we consolidated the solidarity system there.
Bueno, Muchas gracias. I hope this replied to your questions, Emilia, and also that this exchange was fruitful for you, dear Spark participants. Ronny, por ahora te agradezco mucho de nuevo de haber dado este Spark.
Ronny, thank you very much for having done this Spark of October.
At our Congress next week. So CIBP is holding his 30th Congress in Paris next week, and we hope that for the Spark of the month of November, we will be sharing with you the highlights of the Congress. So please stay tuned to the Spark channel, I would say. Ronny will be exchanging with colleagues from the Z Bank, among others, on the digitalization topic, so who knows what comes out. And of course, we will make some footage available for you in the coming months if you want to see some exchanges that happened during the Congress. So again, thank you very much to all for attending today's Spark. As I said in the chat, I will be now sharing the presentation in Spanish, and as soon as it's available in English, we will get it again also in English. Thank you very much for joining today. Ronny, muchas gracias. I see you in Paris next week. Te veo la semana próxima. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Have a good afternoon. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.